The topic chosen for today is pollination in plants. It forms the part 2 of sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Pollination. Transfer of pollen grains from a anther to the stigma of the pistil is known as pollination. In animals, there is no process like pollination because the gametes are mobile. In the case of plants, the gametes are immobile, so they require the process of pollination for fertilization. Pollination occurs in many ways. One type is autogamy. Autogamy means self-pollination. It is achieved within the same flower. If the flowers are bisexual, the pollen grains from the anther are transferred to the pistil of the pistil or stigma of the pistil, and self-fertilization occurs. The self-fertilization has some advantages and also some disadvantages. In the case of self-fertilization, the flowers are smaller, then the petals are also small, they are not scented, nectaries are absent because there is no need to reward any pollinator. But it is also cheap because the expenditure involved in production of nectar, scented petals, etc. is absent. But it has many disadvantages. It brings about inbreeding depression. As there is no genetic variability, it brings about inbreeding depression and it will not contribute to the process of evolution. And in this type of fertilization, the release of pollen grains and the receptivity of the stigma are synchronized. They occur at the same time. Then, in plants like viola, commonly known as common pansy, oxalis, camelina, etc., they produce two types of flowers, two types of bisexual flowers. They are chasmogamous flowers and clistogamous flowers. First, let us take up chasmogamous flowers. Chasmogamous means open marriage. These bisexual flowers, they open up and the stamens and pistils are exposed. Generally, in this type of flowers, cross-fertilization occurs. But self-fertilization is also possible because the flowers are open and there is a possibility of pollen grains coming from other flowers and they fertilize the ovum. The petals are large in these flowers, colorful, and they also carry nectaries to offer rewards to the pollinators. Here, if the pollination is a cross-pollination, genetic recombinations occur and the variability contributing to evolution is also seen. Examples also come from sunflowers and hibiscus. Clistogamous means closed marriage. Here, the flowers never open up. They remain in the form of buds only. And invariably, self-fertilization occurs in clistogamous flowers. Pollen grains coming from the anthers of the same flower fertilize the ova. And these flowers lack nectaries. The petals are colorless and are not scented. As there is complete self-fertilization, genetic variability is absent. So, these plants are the plants having clistogamous or producing clistogamous flowers suffer from inbreeding depression. But the cost of reproduction is cheap because there is no expenditure in the production of nectars and scented petals. These type of flowers are seen in pea and peanut. Second one, getonogamy. In this type, what happens is, on the same plant, we find male and female flowers separately. And fertilization occurs between these two flowers. That means, in getonogamy, both male and female flowers are separate, occur on the same plant, and cross-fertilization takes place between male and female flowers. Technically, we can call it as a cross-pollination, but genetically, it is similar to self-fertilization or autogamy because the pollen grains and the ova come from the same plant. And in this type also, there is no scope for genetic variability. And these plants also are likely to suffer from inbreeding depression. Example, maize, corn, etc. The third type is genogamy. This is true cross-pollination. In this type, the flowers may be bisexual or unisexual, but the pollen grains always come from a different plant. Though the flowers are bisexual, self-fertilization is prevented in this type of flowers because the release of pollen grains and the receptivity of the stigma are not synchronized. They occur at different times through protogynous nature or protanrous nature. That means, protanrous means pollen grains are produced much before the receptivity of the stigma develops. Protogynous nature means the pollen grains are released after the receptivity of stigma. That means the ovaries mature earlier than the production of pollen grains in the case of protogynous nature. In protanrous nature, pollen grains are produced much before the receptivity of stigma develops. In this way, in bisexual flowers, self-fertilization is prevented in the case of genogamy. Genogamy brings about genetic variability and it contributes to evolutionary process. And the seeds produced or the plants produced from or through genogamy exhibit hybrid vigor. They grow rapidly, they produce bigger leaves, bigger fruits, bigger seeds, etc. And genogamy is comparable with outbreeding of animals. Then, genogamy is also a costly process because an agent is required here, generally. Abiotic agent or biotic agent. If the agent is abiotic agent, it is not much expensive. But if it is a biotic agent, the plants has to produce some rewards to the agents in the form of nectar, pollen grains, or a place to lay their eggs, offering their developing seeds to feed the growing larvae of the agent, etc. So in this way, pollination occurs in the form of autogamy, getonogamy, and genogamy. And remember, only in the type of genogamy, genetic variability occurs and it contributes to the process of evolution. Then coming to the agents of pollination, I have told you, the gametes of the plants cannot move on their own. So to carry the pollen grains from anthers to the stigma, some type of agent is required in the case of cross-pollination. These agents are two types, abiotic agents and biotic agents. Abiotic means non-living agents. Biotic agents means living agents. First, let us take up abiotic agents. Air and water, they constitute the abiotic agents. And only few plant species employ abiotic agents for their pollination. And one more thing is, in the case of abiotic agents, the pollination is by chance. It may occur, it may not occur. But an enormous number of pollen grains are to be produced. It is a wasteful process because the chance of fertility is not assured, these plants produce a large number of pollen grains. Then, because they produce a large number of pollen grains, it is a costly process and there is a lot of wastage of pollen grains. The flowers are small, they are not colorful, and they also do not produce nectar because no animal agent is involved. Only for animal agents, the rewards are to be offered. But abiotic agents, there is no need to offer any rewards. That's why nectar is not produced, the petals are not colorful, they are not scented, etc. Then coming to the wind pollination. Wind pollination is the most common type of abiotic type of pollination. In this type, the pollen grains are small, lighter in weight, and they are not sticky. And the stigma is often feathery to trap the pollen grains. It is large and feathery. The anthers are exposed to release the pollen grains into the air. Each ovary in this type has a single ovule and flowers are packed into an inflorescence and they occur in the form of a cob. For example, corn cob. Wind pollination is commonly seen among the grasses. The second type is water pollination. Water pollination is very rare and it occurs only in aquatic plants. There are only 30 genera of plants that exhibit water pollination and they belong to monocotyledons. Then, water pollination is common among plants belonging to the groups algae, bryophytes and pteridophytes. Because of water pollination, these plant groups are limited in their distribution. So water is the limiting factor for the distribution of algae and mainly bryophytes. Then, it doesn't mean that all the aquatic plants are depending on water pollination. There are also some aquatic plants that do not depend on water for their pollination. In this type, what happens is the pistil comes above the water level and it attracts insects and depends on insect pollination. Examples: Vallisneria, seagrasses, etc. One point here we have to remember is when the pollen grains are released into water, they should not become moist. So to prevent getting them moist, a mucilaginous coat is secreted around the pollen grains. So to prevent wetting of the pollen grains, a mucilaginous coat is secreted so that they become waterproof. One more point about water pollination is the pollen grains are elongated and rubber-like to ensure that they reach the pistil of the stigma of the pistil. Then, sometimes the pollen grains are released onto the water surface when the stigma is just on the water surface. If the stigma is inside the water, the pollen grains are released into the water. So in this way again, there are many types of adaptations in the type of water pollination. Then coming to biotic agents. There are a number of animals that involve in fertilization of plants. Insects, bats, birds, some rodents, some primates, etc. All these depend on all these contribute for pollination in plants. These biotic agents are to be rewarded for the service they do to the plants. The rewards come in the form of scented petals, nectaries, developing seeds, pollen grains, etc. Then, majority of the plants depend on biotic agents for fertilization. Then, there are some types of agents where the plants totally depend on those, or the plants depend on a particular type of agent for pollination. The relationship is so intimate that if a particular type of pollinator is absent, pollination can never occur in the plant, and both the plant and the agent become extinct. That's why, in some cases, survival of both the plant and the pollinator are very important because the relationship is so intimate. Then, flowers of these plants are bigger, colorful, scented, and produce nectar. So it is a costly process. To attract the animal agents, the plant has to spend a lot of energy. Then, if the flowers are small, then what happens is they are arranged in the form of a inflorescence to attract the animal agents. Then, some plants produce not fragrance but a foul odor. And in this case, the agents are flies and beetles. Flies and beetles are not attracted by scent but by foul odor. That's why those plants produce foul odor. Then, in the case of yucca plant, here again the relationship is very intimate. The yucca plant and the pollinator, the moth, cannot survive without each other. Here what happens is, the moth carries out fertilization in the yucca plant, and the yucca plant provides a place for the moth to lay its eggs. The plant also provides developing seeds as food to the developing larvae of the moth. In this way, the relationship is very intimate between the yucca plant and the pollinator moth. Then, there is one plant known as Amorphophallus. Amorphophallus. It is the tallest and largest flower. It produces tallest and largest flowers. The flower grows to a tall of 6 feet, and it produces very foul smell. And that foul smell attracts the beetles and flies to fertilize. So in this way, biotic agents participate in the process of pollination. I have told you that inbreeding causes inbreeding depression, and this is disadvantage to the plant as it does not bring any genetic variability and does not contribute to evolutionary process. So plants try to avoid self-fertilization. That's why they have developed a number of devices to promote outbreeding. Outbreeding occurs, or outbreeding is promoted by having a variety of adaptations in the plants. Outbreeding means cross-pollination. That means self-pollination has to be avoided at any cost. That's why plants have developed a variety of devices. The first type, the time of release of pollen grains and receptivity of the stigma are not synchronized. They do not occur at the same time. So this all occurs to bisexual flowers. In the case of bisexual flowers, to prevent self-fertilization, what happens? The time of pollen grains and the receptivity of the stigma occur at different times, so that fertilization within the same plant is prevented, or self-fertilization is prevented. This is done through protogyny or protandrous nature. Already I have told you, protandrous nature means male or the pollen grains are released much before the receptivity develops in the stigma. Protogynous nature means ovaries mature earlier than the pollen grains. In this way, self-fertilization is prevented in bisexual flowers. Then another interesting method is the level of anthers and stigma are at different heights, so that it prevents the chance of coming them together. resulting in self-fertilization. So by exhibiting proteanthers and protogenous nature and by keeping the anthers and stamens at different heights, self-fertilization is prevented in this state. In the second type, it is a genetic mechanism. Here, self-fertilization is prevented by two processes. That is, by inhibiting pollen generation or pollen germination. Even if the pollen germination occurs, it prevents growth of pollen tube. So pollen germination and pollen tube growth are important for fertilization. But these two processes are prevented. As a result, and this is known as self-incompatibility. Self-incompatibility. If the pollen grains of the same flower falls on the stigma of the same flower, what happens? It inhibits the germination of the pollen grain and the germination of pollen tube. This is known as self-incompatibility. And this self-incompatibility prevents chasmogamy and cleistogamy. These two processes are prevented. The third type, production of unisexual flowers. This is the best method. Again, there are two types. I have told you, in the case of geitonogamy, male flowers and female flowers are separate, but they are present on the same plant. So it results in cross-fertilization technically, but scientifically it is nothing but self-pollination. So if both male and female flowers are present on the same plant, what happens? It prevents autogamy, but not geitonogamy. Examples: castor, maize, etc. Then, male and female flowers are present on different plants. Here, true cross-fertilization takes place. It prevents both autogamy and geitonogamy. So these points you must know very carefully. If both male plants and female plants are present on the same plant, it prevents autogamy but does not prevent geitonogamy. If male and female flowers are present on different plants, it prevents both autogamy and geitonogamy. This type is seen in papaya, date palm, palm trees, etc. Then, I will have told you, self-pollination has many disadvantages and few advantages also. Disadvantages means it brings about no genetic variability. Without genetic variability, they suffer from inbreeding depression. And it also does not contribute to the process of evolution. And it is inexpensive because there is no need to produce any scented petals or nectar in the nectaries, etc. Disadvantages. So inbreeding depression and failure to contribute to evolution. So in this way, pollination occurs in plants. Thank you.